In this video, I'll be doing my first look at the new Niner RIP9. And my first look videos are where I just finished building up the bike. I have not even ridden the bike. I want to show it as it's built, talk about some of the components, talk about how it built up. As you may know, the new RIP9 is now offered in not only a 29, but a 27.5. I elected for the 29 for a few reasons. Mainly, my cross-country bike is a Niner RIP9 RDO. And so staying with the 29er platform is a little bit easier to make the transition between the two bikes. The first thing that I'll get out of the way is the weight of this entire bike with Shimano XT trail pedals. And the bike comes in at 31.5 pounds as it's built. So this is the 3-star build with the SRAM GX Eagle. It's got the Guide R brakes, 4-piston brakes with the reach adjustment lever. Does not have the contact knob, but that's not really a big deal for me. The big deal for me is this reach lever. So it's a typical SRAM GX Eagle drivetrain with a 32 in the front, and you've got the 500% spread in the back on the SRAM Eagle. But let's talk about the frame, because that's the most exciting thing about this bike. And I just want to say that, first of all, the polish and finish of this bike is like no other bike that I've ever seen. The paint job is just killer on this, but look at the thickness of these seat stays and the top tube, how it just flares out here. This is going to be, I think, a bike that's going to ride so well. The top tube really dips in the bottom so that you can run a pretty long dropper post. So this is, I think, a 150 mil dropper post, but I think you can run up to a 170. Of course, you can fit a water bottle here. So a big burly trail bike. There are days when I like to use a water bottle and not just a hydration pack. Niner has a flip chip, which I have not switched yet, but it's right here. So you would just undo the pivot bolts and flip this around. So I think it's in the high setting. So it's got the H and the L, so the H is up. So I'm going to assume that's in the high position, which is probably where I'm going to end up running this for most of my local riding. And then when I go out west and go up to like North Carolina, North Georgia, probably drop it in the low setting for the high speed stuff. Probably even get this thing going into some enduro races this summer, I hope. The frame does come with options for running the new Fox Live valve. So let's talk about the suspension. So Fox DPX2 shock with the Kashima coating. It's got the Fox 36. So this bike is just spec to rip. No pun intended. Actually, okay, little pun there. So Fox 36, 150 mil travel fork in the frame is 140. And by the way, for the 27.5, you cannot just slap in 27.5 wheels on these. Niner has completely changed the design of the frames so that one is optimized for 27.5 and one is optimized for 29. The cable routing on this bike is so good, it almost brought me to tears. All you do is you feed the cable, its entire cable housing, you feed it in and it pops out, no fuss, and then you feed it back in and then it pops out, and it is so easy. And you may not appreciate that, but if you've built bikes in the past where you had to fish wires through a frame, right up here, you've got the brake cable. So, you know, I did, of course, have to cut the brake line. So all I did was I fed the brake line here, popped out here, pop it in here, pops out here, does not get hung up, does not snag, it just pops out effortlessly. And of course, the shifter housing goes into here. And Niner has these little ferrules, grommets, whatever you may call them, the little plastic things that keep the cables from rattling around. Super easy to put in. They're split, so you can just put them over the cables, pop them in there. There's a little hole, and on the grommet or ferrule itself is something that goes into that hole to keep them in place. And so it's just, oh, like I said, you may not appreciate it, but for someone who's built a lot of bikes, this bike was a bike builder's dream. It came pretty well put together. If you're familiar with old Niner, so I'll just mention real quick, Niner used to have everything disassembled, and this is good news for shops. Now they're coming, the crankset already installed, so bottom bracket crankset. The wheels are already put together with the cassette on, the rotors on, the tires on. I did have to cut the fork, but that's okay. I left a lot of spacers. I don't know how many spacers I'm going to need, so I included 5, so I can cut the fork down a little bit more if I want to. The head cups were already installed. The cable was already run for the dropper seat post. So the main thing I had to do was cut the brake lines and bleed the brakes and cut the fork. Other than that, this bike built up really easily. Underneath the frame, you do have a bash guard, and you even have a little guard right here under the frame to protect it from any chain slap. And of course it does have a really nice chain stay protector and a plate here to protect the chain in case you were to drop the chain. For sizing, I went with a medium. I'm 5'8". I think this bike is going to fit me well. I've ridden a lot of Niners in the past, and typically I will go with a medium. So a little bit more about the frame. So it's got this bracing here, which I think maybe is called rib cage, but it comes around the shock. And I noticed that on the new Specialized stump jumper that I was testing, it was asymmetrical, but it did have a bracing to kind of tie the frame together, and it really helped the stiffness. So I'd imagine this is going to do the same thing. The only downside is that because of this, the shock is hard to get to. Niner includes a little adapter. So this is the adapter that Niner includes. It's made by Topeak. And actually there's a place where you can mount it on the frame, so there's a little bracket that Niner includes if you wanted to carry it with you. For me, I don't really need to carry it because once I get my suspension set up, I don't really adjust it, but I may carry it with me when I travel. The nice thing about this is this sag meter. It's so easy. So what happens is, as you sit on the bike, the suspension compresses and you line up the 30% with the line. And I thought maybe I was going to have a friend kind of look on the side and watch it, but you can actually see it from sitting on the bike. So you can look down and check your sag. Super easy. All right, moving on to the rest of the bike. So the bars are a 780Y bar. I'm going to leave them at 780. I think that's a good width for me for trail riding. The stem, I believe, is a 40, so short little stem. It's got an SDG dropper seat post. Super smooth, easy to set up. You actually do the cable, you run it from the seat post to the lever, so you pinch it off here. Very easy to set up. Underneath the lever design. I like these flanged grips. I may put on my WTB grips just because I'm super used to them, but these remind me of my Amy BMX grip back in the day. So I thought that was a pretty cool touch. They are lock-ons, so that's nice. The saddle, I've always liked Niner saddles, and this looks to be a really comfortable one. It seems like the shape has changed a little bit. After I do a few rides on this bike, I'll do another follow-up review and talk about the comfort of the saddle. The wheels are Stan's Flow. These are alloy wheels. This is actually the first mountain bike that I will have ridden in quite a while without carbon rims. So that's my only question mark for this bike. Will I want to upgrade to carbon wheels down the road? Maybe. If this is a bike I decide to hold on to long term, I probably will. And just by looking at this bike and a lot of the features on it, this could be a bike that I hold on to maybe longer than I've held on to any trail bike in quite a while. The tires, the rear is a Maxxis Aggressor 2.5, and the front is a Maxxis Minion DF, also a 2.5. Both the front and the rear rotor are 180, and the nice thing about the front is with the Fox 36, you don't have to use any kind of adapter. It's a direct post mount. On the back, you do have to use the adapter. Something else that people are going to be pretty excited about is this bike does come with a threaded bottom bracket. Yes, does not have a press fit bottom bracket. So I think a lot of bike companies are now going back to external threaded bottom brackets. It is the SRAM dub system, so it's a new width for the spindle, the crank spindle. I think it's like 28.99, I don't know, something like that. But what it does is it uses the same crank for whether it's a press fit or a threaded. So it's standardizing the cranks, which I actually think is a really good move. I'll mention the color. So I actually was going to go with the desert sand color. It was out of stock when I went to order this bike, so I went with this color. And now that I've seen this color in person, I actually prefer this one. So I'm kind of glad the way that worked out. Another nice touch is that the head tube is a little shorter, and that allows you to run a riser bar, which I like the feel of a riser bar better than a flat bar. It's just better on my wrists. So that is another nice touch. So that's my quick look at the new Niner RIP9 RDO in the 29 version, 3-star build. I'm actually not gonna ride this bike. I'm just gonna put it on the wall and put a picture frame around it. I'm kidding. It's a beautiful bike, but it's time to get it dirty. So I'm gonna finish up my suspension setup, a few other little touches, and then I'm going to get it out on the trail this week. And I've got a trip planned to go up to Pisgah in a few weeks and start to thrash this thing in some pretty rugged terrain. So really excited about that. So that is my first look at the new Niner RIP9 RDO. Thanks for watching.